So here's a question nobody actually asks out loud because the answer feels too obvious to bother with. Why does your dog fall apart when you leave the room, while your cat watches you go like you're a piece of furniture that occasionally produces food? Same house, same bowls, same hands doing the feeding, wildly different relationships. And underneath that everyday difference is something far stranger than personality. Start with the dog, because the dog is where the evidence is loudest. There's a moment you already know. Your dog looks up at you, holds your eyes, and something in your own chest quietly goes soft. For a long time, we called that sentimental nonsense. The kind of thing pet owners say because they want it to be true. Then, in 2015, a team led by Takafumi Nagasawa published a study in the journal Science that did something almost rude in its simplicity. They measured it. They had dogs and their owners sit together and do nothing dramatic at all. Just look at each other. Then they checked the oxytocin in both of them. Oxytocin is the hormone your body runs during the deepest bonding it's capable of. And the cleanest example we have is a human mother and her newborn. She looks at the baby, her oxytocin rises, the baby's rises, and that shared chemistry pulls them tighter into a loop. What Nagasawa's team found is that the same loop fires between a dog and a person. The longer the mutual gaze, the more oxytocin rose, in the dog and in the human. And when they gave dogs a little extra oxytocin, the dogs gazed at their owners more, which raised the owner's oxytocin, which closed the circle. Not a metaphor. The same hormonal machinery a mother runs with her child, running between a primate and a domesticated wolf. And that phrase matters, domesticated wolf, because here's where the floor drops out. They ran a version of the same test with wolves. Not wild, snarling wolves, but wolves raised by humans, hand-reared, as socialized as a wolf gets. And the loop wasn't there. The wolves mostly wouldn't even hold the eye contact, let alone build a hormonal feedback spiral out of it, which leads somewhere unsettling. That melting gaze your dog gives you isn't a wolf inheritance. Wolves don't do it. It appeared somewhere along the road between wolf and dog, the road we built. We bred a creature whose body chemistry locks onto ours. Sit with that for a second, because it's a little uncanny before it becomes tender. We engineered an animal to love us, and it worked so well, we forgot we did it. Now, before this hardens into a neat story, it deserves an honest scratch. Some researchers have pushed back on the wolf comparison, pointing out that you can't fairly line up wolves living in enclosures against pet dogs sleeping on someone's bed and call it a clean experiment. The conditions are too different, so the gaze loop in dogs is solid, landmark, repeatable. The claim that it was born specifically during domestication is well supported, but not stamped and sealed. Worth knowing the difference, because a video that pretends science is tidier than it is doesn't deserve your trust. There's a second piece of dog evidence that's almost more telling than the hormones. Point at something. A dog follows your finger to the hidden food, reads your gaze, checks your face for what to do next. Sounds trivial until you learn that chimpanzees, who share almost all our DNA, are worse at it. Even human-raised wolves are worse at it. Somewhere in becoming dogs, they got fluent in us. They learned to read the one species that decided their fate, so you'd think this all lands on a comfortable conclusion. Dogs love, cats don't. And this is exactly where the easy story breaks, because the cat was never running the same race. Cats come from a different starting point entirely. Dogs descend from wolves, and wolves are social animals. They live and hunt in coordinated groups, so the raw material for bonding was already in them before we ever showed up. The domestic cat descends from the African wildcat, a creature that is fundamentally solitary. It hunts alone. It patrols alone. It does not by nature form a pack to belong to. And we domesticated cats more recently and far more loosely than dogs. They more or less moved into our grain stores to hunt mice and stuck around on their own terms. So when a cat strolls away from you mid-affection like it just remembered an appointment, you're not watching indifference. You're watching a solitary species doing affection in the only grammar it has. And the research backs this up in a way that surprised even cat skeptics. In 2019, Kristen Vitale and her colleagues at Oregon State published a study in Current Biology using a version of the strange situation, the same test psychologists use to measure how securely a baby is attached to its parent. They ran cats through it, and the cats showed the same range of attachment patterns we see in human infants and in dogs, most of them securely bonded to their person, using the human as a base of safety in a strange room. The aloofness was never the absence of a bond. It was a bond expressed by an animal whose ancestors had no use for displaying it loudly. There's a small detail I love here. Adult cats barely meow at each other. Meowing is mostly something they do at us. They invented a channel of communication specifically aimed at the strange tall apes who feed them. The cat that seems to ignore you has, in its own evolutionary way, developed a language just for you. That's not nothing. That's the opposite of nothing. Which brings us, fairly, to the skeptic in the back of the room. Maybe the skeptic in you. Is any of this actually love? Or are we reading our own feelings onto a hormone and a feeding schedule? And the honest answer is, we have to be careful. We can measure attachment behaviors. We can measure oxytocin rising. What we cannot do is climb inside an animal's head and directly feel what it feels. Some of what we call loyalty is bonding biology. Some of it might just be learned association. You are the source of food and warmth and safety, and a brain is very good at attaching to that. Oxytocin itself isn't dog magic either. It's a general piece of mammalian wiring that runs bonding across countless species. It's not proof of love. It's the machinery love would run on. Honest question, and I genuinely want your answer. Do you think your pet actually loves you, or has it simply got you trained? There's no wrong answer here, and I'd like to hear which way you lean. Tell me below. If this is the kind of thing you like chewing on, subscribing keeps it coming. So where does all of this actually settle? Not on a scoreboard where loyal animals win and aloof ones lose. Attachment turns out to be the meeting of two things: how social a species was to begin with, and how intensely we wove our history into theirs. The fish never had the wiring, there's no ancient social machinery in it for us to plug into, so it swims in its bowl genuinely unbothered by whether you exist. The cat had different wiring, solitary wiring, and bonds with us anyway, quietly, on a solitary creature's terms. And the dog had the social wiring already, and then we spent tens of thousands of years sharpening it into a key cut precisely to fit us. And here's the turn I want to leave you on. We tend to ask whether our animals really love us, half bracing for the deflating answer that they're just using us for food, that the whole thing is a transaction we dressed up in feeling. But flip the question over. The dog's bond isn't less real because it isn't natural. It's more real because it isn't natural. It's not an accident of the wild. It's something two different species built together, hormone for hormone, across a stretch of time longer than any friendship, any marriage, any human bond you will ever personally hold. So when your dog looks up and holds your eyes, and something in your chest goes quiet and warm, that softness isn't you projecting onto a dumb animal. That's the loop, firing in both directions, exactly as it was designed to. And the strange, humbling part is that you don't get to know which of you did the designing. If we shaped them to love us, we shaped ourselves to love them back. Somewhere in those thousands of years, it stopped being clear who was domesticating whom.